because he's got a whole 5,000 or 6,000 hardcore ideologists whom are disagreeing with him. Remember, almost everyone he has brought in, not one is a true progressive. Not one. I've looked at all the resumes. So where's the solution? The positive solution to Barack Obama's problem, the positive solution for America, is to reach out to all the true progressives. Rabbi Michael Lerner, think of all the, Professor Ledman. I could give you a list of at least 500 true progressives in education, in foreign affairs, in health and nutrition, in farming, in food safety, in national security. People who would come as a progressive, not as an ideologue representing the left or right. And we have never been unified. We are progressive but not unified. We need now to unify ourselves to the common goal of helping Obama realign himself and his policies by bringing people in and saying goodbye to people who are there. And as more true progressives come into his field, and these are the people that can give him the daily advice. Because right now when he sits down, he didn't know about how to handle the banking crisis. He's not a banker. He's not an economist. He had never owned his own business. But for those of us who do understand economics, who own our own businesses, who know what has to be done, not one of us was invited. He didn't invite Rabini. He didn't invite Stiglitz. But now we have to say, this is who you should be listening to. You've been listening to the wrong persons. So there's still a chance to correct all this. But it means that we, the progressives, must unify and put a big, positive, constructive, healing energy into saying, how about listening to us now?
Thank you. Do you have time for a couple more?
Sure.
Please discuss the so-called great success of the bailout plan. Despite the unemployment being at its highest in 50 years, the foreclosures at their highest since 1938, and the people who are earning less than they were 50 years ago. However, policymakers say we are, quote-unquote, out of the recession.
Well, we're not out of a recession. We're going into a Great Depression. The Treasury is the Treasury is giving money out at 0.2 to 0.5%, which is virtually free money, but only to the big banks, who then charge people astronomical amounts on their credit cards. So they could be getting zero that they pay for $1 and charging you 30%. That's 3,000% markup. That's how they make their bonuses. That's how they get their stock prices up. The bailout was terrific for banks, insurance companies, hedge funds, and equity partnerships, the very people who created the problem. It was disastrous for everyone else. I'm going to make it real simple. Here's the problem, here's the solution. The problem is we should reinstigate all of the old protections, the Glass-Steagall Act. We should ban trading in commodities for profit, such as oil, water, food. So you cannot make a profit. That stops that from being exploited. Secondly, here's the myth. The myth was that we needed these banks. Goldman Sachs never helped you or I. All right? They help each other. Goldman Sachs gives the big loans to the hedge fund companies, the equity buyouts, so they make their big commissions. The average mom and pop bank is who the average person should fund with and get their loans from. These are stable. They're not speculating. Wall Street doesn't create major new industries. It consolidates existing ones. So let's say you want to open up a new business in Akron, Ohio, and you need money to do that, and you're going to employ 500 people. There are local financial institutions that can help you bring that together. Now, let's say if you were a company working in Akron for 100 years and you had 1,000 employees and you were profitable, then an equity buyout company would come to you and say, I'm going to give you $10 million. Go to Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs would give them $50 million. They would keep $40 million for their profit. Goldman Sachs would make $5 million off the top for its profit. Now you would be bought out and you would owe $50 million. You couldn't survive more than 7 years and 2 months. That's the average lifespan. So when they say, oh, well, we need Wall Street, no, we don't. Wall Street is given the collective money to cause millions of Americans lose their jobs, to consolidate, to causing monopolies and trusts. And we used to have trust busters. We don't now. We used to have many people in the media. We don't now. So Wall Street is actually the opposite of what we need. We don't need Wall Street to thrive and survive. Only the financial sector needs Wall Street. But that represents a tiny fraction. No more than about 5% of our gross domestic product should come through Wall Street. What has happened is as much as 20% of our total gross domestic profits have come from people making money from money by gambling. But there was no asset there. There was no new factory. There was no new job. There was no helping the local people in their community. That's the myth that we've been told. So if we gave students loans, zero interest loans to pay off all their loans so they went into life without the burden of having all this debt, that would be the humanitarian thing to do. If we gave small businesses a 2% loan with no repayment for 2 years as long as they hired 5 new employees, then we're growing the local economy and putting people back to work, but not burdening them. If we help people who were credit worthy to finance homes that are to be built by bypassing the securitization and how they packaged all those mortgages and then sold them overseas, if you made that against the law. So if you went to a local bank and you put down 20% and you showed you had a real income, not a liar's loan income, and you got your loan, then let the local bank charge you a local interest with a clause in every contract. If for any reason you lose your job, you become unemployed or disabled or you're not able to keep up the payment, it will automatically set back to 15% of your income. That way no one would ever be thrown out of their home again. That would help keep people in their homes, which keeps up the value of the local neighborhood, which keeps a person from being out and homeless on the streets, which keeps people from being so angry. And so there are many positive things we can do, but Wall Street has nothing to do with any of that. Remember, Wall Street won't give you a loan. Wall Street won't help you. Wall Street is purely based upon methodical greed. It is unconscious capitalism. It is mercenary capitalism. Now, they could be conscientious and spiritual capitalists. They could make money and then give 20% of all their profits to their employees. They could try to have minimal growth. I'm a person who believes in minimal growth. The less growth you have, the more control you have over it, and therefore the long-term stability of your company is more important than the profits for any given period. We could also make every company in America set aside 5% of its profits each year for helping the environment, for helping important social causes. We could rebuild our infrastructure, but to do that we should have 2 taxes. We should have one in the state to run the state, one in the city to run the city governments, and one for the federal government. We should abolish the income tax, abolish the Federal Reserve, and if we had a 10% sales tax, so every time you consume anything, you're supporting the government. And at the state level, 6%, at the city level, 3%. That means that if we had 10 federal, 6 and 3, we have 19% taxes that we're paying, period. Then make the governments work within them. You end all of the bureaucracy that's unnecessary and duplicative. You end all of the profiteering. You end the privatization and stop privatization. Also, you could empty out the prisons, most of the people in the prisons, and take away the profit industry that is if you decriminalize drugs, and we could do things that would be smart. If we bought the drugs, the poppies from Afghanistan and from Colombia, and then made them into pharmaceutical compounds for people with pain, anesthetics, that would be that they're short of in medicine, we could be helping people who need an actual narcotic for pain and getting the farmers to shift over to different types of crops to sustain the local economies in their countries. Everything we're doing wrong. We could do it right. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Gary.
I want to thank all of you for watching Dr. Stephen Barnett's Right in the Studio, and it is the most important environmental show in the United States, only on the Progressive Radio Network. And Stephen, tell us what you're going to be talking about today on your program.
Well, as you know, there's a big doings in the UN about the environment.